And one of the players that will be the centerpiece of it all is Micah Parsons. Now, Micah recently, in some interviews during All-Star Weekend, Super Bowl, NBA All-Star Weekend, Micah has kind of been on his press run. And so he sat down with Stephen A. Smith and they had this conversation. And one of the things that Micah talked about was, he said during the Super Bowl, he had an opportunity he said that he was leaving the hotel to win, and he saw Jerry Jones, and they talked, and Jerry Jones hooked him up and his boys with some more Super Bowl tickets, and they sat in the suite, and they talked for 2 or 3 hours about all things Cowboy related. And in that conversation, he talked about, what he appreciated about Jerry Jones was that Jerry was an open owner or GM. And that Jerry kind of took the intake and the intel of players and kind of processed that, or at least let them vocalize it. Now, me personally, I don't think Micah Parsons is... Yeah, I think the right word is qualified. I don't think Micah Parsons is qualified in 3 years, 16, 32. He doesn't have 50 games under his belt. So I don't know if Micah is the guy who is qualified to tell the owner of a team what guys that he needs to put around him. From my personal liking, I like a guy that be like in year 5, right? In year 5, maybe a guy who has 100 games under his belt, who can really has a sense of how all this works and what's realistic and what's not Madden. Because sometimes we start playing Madden and we start saying we get him, and him. Boy, we can go. I don't know if that's realistic. But Micah said he talked to Jerry and if Micah can take anything from Dak Prescott, I want Micah to just sit down and just take a course on leadership. If you can learn anything from 04, it's how to navigate and move. Because Micah wants to be a star. Like, he wants to be the biggest star that is on the Cowboys. I have no doubt about that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But with that comes the ability to be able to navigate yourself through the waters of media. And Micah has to understand the fine line of being real and saying what he thinks the people want to hear, and realizing that I am supposed to be the leader or one of the leaders of this football team. So when Micah comes out, and this is just my personal opinion, and the last time I said that, it got me, things went a little bit haywire for me. I do think the one thing that Micah kind of, in my personal opinion, is when you say things like, yeah, I told Jerry or I told Jay that we need, or I need a 300-pound defensive lineman, and you start naming names. Or when you say I need a linebacker and you start naming names and you start talking about and comparing to other teams. I think the thing that, and when you say it publicly, like you don't say it in a private conversation or in your group chats or pillow talking with your lady. You say it with Stephen A. Smith. That's national. That's going to get around. I think the thing that he doesn't realize is feel how you feel. This is talking to the fans. Mozzie Smith heard that. How does that relate to Mozzie Smith? Big Hankins stepped on the scale the next morning and go, last I checked, I was 330. How is that received? When you start saying things and you start putting players' names on that, like you said about Tank Lawrence, how is that now received in the locker room? And this is the part that can get very, very contentious. Especially when you're dealing with men with egos. Because I do believe, as a person who was in the NFL, rather brief, I get it. But never mistaken, and my pension is I'm fully vested. Okay? So while y'all might have y'all jokes, I am fully vested. When I get 65, ooh, catch me at the Golden Corral, cause I'm letting them dollars fly when I get to that pension. You hear me? Just saying. All the grandmas and they gonna be like, go ahead, Jesse, on the meatloaf. Yeah. Yeah, get the meatloaf, Beatrice. Yeah. Get the meatloaf, Glenda. What you want? They got shrimp. It's on me. It's on Jay Holley. That NFL pension coming through. I'm a millionaire at 61. Turn up. I get this every month for the rest of my living life. Golden Corral on me. On Zaddy. On G Zaddy. Yeah. Yeah, you could get some crab legs, girl. Anyway. Sorry. Back to what I was saying. But he has to be mindful that when you begin to open up, and I get it, like some people want to hear that, but you have to take a moment and say, but there's guys in the locker room who I may have just alienated. Because if Micah is telling Jerry that I need a 350-pound defensive lineman, while all of that, two things can be true. Two things can be true. You just told Hankins, you just told Mozzie Smith, yeah, I don't really care about your job. You just told whoever was playing linebacker that essentially I'm going to the boss and telling the boss to replace you. Because all of them can't exist. They all can't exist. So while it may not be Hankins, it may not be Mozzie, because now you start going down the order. Well, if Mozzie was a first-round pick last year, they're not going to get rid of him in year one or year two, going into year two. Then that means Neville Gallimore or someone else now, because you want them to bring in another dude. Well, hell, you only got 48 spots on game day. Somebody got to lose a job. Now, I get that the roster get turned over every single year, but when you say it and you're that direct, that has an impact on the guys that you have to now go to battle with. And I think sometimes that doesn't, because you can say, and this is the part where I'm saying, like, you don't have to answer every question that's asked to you. Sometimes keeping it real can actually go wrong. So while we as a public, as a fan base understands and knows, yeah, Mozzie didn't cut it. Guess what? I can say that. Mozzie ain't my teammate. Mozzie ain't my friend. Mozzie ain't a guy that I looked at and work with. So when you say that, I think sometimes you don't realize it's a direct correlation and a direct impact to the guys that are in the locker room. Now, what will begin to happen is guys will start saying, well, dang, he called me out. Now, every time you don't show up, they're going to say, well, hell, he called me out. Look at him. Because if we're being honest, there's always this unspoken knowledge and conversation and rule that you know that everybody can't stay. Everybody can't be on the roster every single year. But that's not for you to say publicly. Because if I'm a teammate, I'm saying, damn, he told Jerry that? He publicly just said, I told Jerry, here are the things that I need, that we need, that I want to play around. And I need these things added to the roster. Well, I went to public high school. Shout out to the University of North Carolina. It's a public university. And I ain't the brightest bulb in the box. But they ain't adding no more roster spots to the 53-man. So in order for you to add, there needs to be some subtraction. Is my math mathing? So when you say that, what you need, and you're being as direct as you are, there's guys in the locker room that you're supposed to be leading. Now, maybe you feel like, well, the hell with them. But I don't think you feel that way. I just think sometimes we need to kind of just take a moment to think about what you're going to say, because sometimes being real ain't being right. Especially if you're going to be a leader in that locker room, and now you want those guys to go into a foxhole with you. That's the part that people miss. You can't say that publicly and then expect me to go and put my body on the line for you unconditionally. I know it's my job, but there's an extra level of oomph. There's an extra level of drive, and people can say, well, that's dumb, that's stupid, whatever. It's the way it is. If I'm just your teammate and we're associates, I'm doing my job. I'm doing my job. If we kind of got a friendship and we cool, I'm willing to go that extra mile. But if I love you and you my brother and we like this, I'm ready to go through a wall for you. No questions asked. I'm ready to ride. But that can't be when you call me out publicly and you try to replace me. So I just think that that's something that and honestly, and aside from Micah saying and telling Jerry what he wants, I just think let Scout do what they do. Like, they pay Will McClay a lot of money to go and do what he does. We saw what happened when Jerry, and that's the one thing I will say. We say that Jerry is kind of this dictator and he's like Kim Jong-un, when he's really not. Jerry listens to everybody. And that at times is the biggest problem with the Cowboys. Is that so many people get a chance to have an input. And when you have that many voices and that many minds and that many people pouring into a decision, it at times doesn't become a sound one. Which then in return leave you with draft picks and players that you cannot use. So whether it's from a player, whether it's from a coach, whether it's from a friend, I think sometimes you need to let those who are professionals do what they are paid to do. Will McClay is not paid to coach defense, coach offense, to train people in the weight room, to take people in the training room, to get uniforms ready for game day. Will McClay is paid and is designed and is worked to scout and bring in players. When you let him and his staff, whether it be locally, regionally, nationally, however they want to do it, let those guys pick the players. Kind of tell them what you want on the grocery list. Let them go find them. Kind of works out better that way.